Good morning. I'm the Reverend Judith Long, the Affiliate Community Minister at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hendersonville. I also serve as the Executive Director of the Free Clinics. Welcome to this unique Easter Sunday service as we explore virtual church. Joining me for this morning's service are Todd and Meg Hoke. If you are a visitor and would like to learn more about our congregation, you can find us at uufhnc.org. And if you would like to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, you can find us at uua.org. Thank you for joining us this morning. Come, let us gather the hopes of the universe into this time together. Let us again summon the spirit that binds us, the yearning that calls us, the faith that moves us. Let us leave behind our troubles and renew our bond with the wellspring of life. May mercy, compassion, justice, and wholeness be real. May our faith be strengthened. May we again try to live the ancient commandment to love one another. A flame, symbol of divine light, source of strength, of hope, of light during this season of darkness. A flame, representing the light of the mystery of God, of the spirit of life which sustains us and all of life. A flame, uniquely able to burn brightly and to spark our own lights without being diminished. This flame, this chalice we now light, symbol of our faith, symbol of hope and love, symbol of life, of spirit, of God, of mystery. Symbol also of our own inner light, our own reflection of divinity. May this flame of our faith sustain us, rejuvenate us, and burn brightly within each of us, this moment and all moments, this day and all days. And now Todd Hope will join us for our opening song.
Hey y'all, I'm Todd Hoke. Good to see you this morning, or whatever this is we're doing. So I'm going to share a song with you that I wrote a while back for a friend of mine, but like most written things, it kind of changes use and meaning. And right now, to me, it's about the transition from a dark space to one that's more illuminated, I suppose. So. Another cup of coffee, another cigarette, another painful memory that she'll try to forget. Another restless night with so much left undone. But come the morning light, the rising of the sun. It's a new world come the morning, when the darkest find the past. Cling to the morning glory, like the dew on the grass. A suitcase full of treasures, a backpack full of dreams, a future that's uncertain, but the time has come, it seems. A journey long and winding, a fight that's been won, a knot that's unraveled till the whole thing had come undone. It's a new world come the morning, when the dark is finally past. cling to the morning glory like the dew on the grass. So she's headed out that front door with a few things she packed. Not sure where she's going, she ain't looking back. Outside the sun is shining down, all the world's glowing bright. And as the shadows melt away, she smiles into the light. It's a new world come the morning, when the dark is finally past. Cling to the morning glory like the dew on the grass. It's a new world come the morning, when the dark is finally past. Cling to the morning glory like the dew on the grass.
When we are gathered for service, our stones of community represent our pastoral prayer, a time to share our individual hopes, joys, sorrows, concerns, and compassion by placing a stone in the water, sending ripples of thoughts, prayers, and love through our community. At this time, in virtual worship, I place the stones for those thoughts that are with many of us, for those who are anxious and afraid, for those who are lonely and yearning for human contact, for those who are enjoying some quiet time at home with loved ones, for those whose home is unsafe, for those without a home, for those grieving the loss of normal, for those suddenly jobless and worried about their economic future, for those savoring hope, for these and all other joys, sorrows, hopes, and concerns. Let us join together in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life and of love, we come together virtually this morning from our separate lives, stillness in our hearts, minds, and spirit. May we loosen the bonds of separateness and share, if virtually, in this moment of peace and hope. Let us breathe together. Simply breathe. Focusing for a moment on our very breath. In and out, in. The air that nurtures our bodies and animates our being. As you breathe out, I breathe in. We are connected. Our breath mingling in this world as our lives are intertwined. Our very breath uniting us. As we breathe together, so may we live and love and celebrate and mourn together. We stop for a moment to celebrate the gifts of life, love, and the blessings of this day. May we find in this time the nourishment we need for our bodies, for our minds, for our hearts, and for our souls. May we find comfort and loss and regret. May we find peace when we feel anxiety. May we find the love and warmth and kindness which nurtures our spirits, eases our burdens, welcomes us into the community of life. Let us rejoice in this life and in this community, mindful that our community is all of humanity, all of life. Bound by the eternal web of life, we celebrate each other and the gifts of the universe.
Traditionally, our congregation celebrates Flower Communion on Easter Sunday. Sometime during the spring, Unitarian Universalists all over the world celebrate a ritual in which flowers are collected and then shared among those gathered. Each congregation's celebration of Flower Communion is unique, and this year, our celebration is particularly unique given the unprecedented moment in which we find ourselves. Though we cannot celebrate in the same way, we cannot bring flowers to our church service and physically share them with each other, our congregation has shared images of flowers, which you will see before you. The Flower Communion was created by Dr. Norbert Čepek, minister of the Unitarian Church of Prague, Czechoslovakia, and the first celebrated in 1923. Later, when the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia, Dr. Čepek formed a committee of resistance, was arrested, interred at Dachau, and murdered there by the Nazis. His martyrdom grounds his Flower Communion in harsh political reality, while at the same time inspiring us that even in the most despairing circumstances, life breaks forth and rises in triumph. This year, as we celebrate our Flower Communion during this unique moment, may we center ourselves in that sense of life blossoming, even amidst challenge, fear, and despair. Flower Communion celebrates two UU values: the inherent worth and dignity of each person, and the interconnected web of all existence, of which we are a part. No two flowers are exactly alike, and neither are we. Each flower is beautiful in its own way, and so are we. Each of us and our unique gifts are special. As we see the beauty before us, may we also hold dear the uniqueness of our friends and family, neighbors and companions, each in the global human community, which feels so very close right now, poignantly interconnected. Flower Communion celebrates our human interconnectedness and the richness and beauty of the earth and all her gifts. At this time of global distancing, we experience profoundly the interconnectedness, our human interconnectedness, and each of our personal impact on the health of others. That by staying away from each other, we protect each other, as well as the interconnected web of existence. As humans slow their activities, we witness the significant impact on our world. Skies and waters clearing of pollution, animals emerging to wander through the cities and towns, to the delight of social media. At the very first Flower Communion, Dr. Chapek blessed the flowers with these words: Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us that amid diversities of knowledge and gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of the most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. Those words feel especially poignant this year, that the efforts of all of us are needed, and the call to be one in desire and affection. I invite you, when the service has ended, to find a flower in your yard or home, or to find an image that calls to you. Feel and see and hold in that flower the beauty of the earth, the worth of each person in our global human family, our profound interconnectedness, and the power of each of our efforts to care for each other. This day and all days, so it may be, so may it be. Amen. Good morning. I'm Meg Hoke, and I'm going to do a reading from Sarah York. It's actually found in our hymnal. It's number 628, called Rolling Away the Stone. In the tomb of the soul, we carry secret yearnings, pains, frustrations, loneliness, fears, regrets, worries. In the tomb of the soul, we take refuge from the world and its heaviness. In the tomb of the soul, we wrap ourselves in the security of darkness. Sometimes this is a comfort. Sometimes it's an escape. Sometimes it prepares us for experience. Sometimes it insulates us from life. Sometimes this tomb life gives us time to feel the pain of the world and reach out to help others. Sometimes it numbs us and locks us up with our own concerns. In this season where light and dark balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves. Grateful for the darkness that has nourished us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within us and among us. Possibilities for the new life in ourselves and in our world. Amen.
For Unitarian Universalists, Easter often poses a challenge. For our more traditional Christian brethren, This is the holiest of days, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, and with it the theology of atonement, that Christ died for our sins and washed away the stain of original sin. That one sentence contains so much theology that liberal Christianity and Unitarian Universalists usually reject. So UUs are often flummoxed by Easter and how to find a meaningful message on a holy day that expresses a wholly different understanding of the world from most of ours. Too often we attempt to ignore Easter and turn only to spring rituals and the rebirth of life in nature. But in these times, the times in which we find ourselves demand a deeper exploration of Easter, of life, of resurrection, and of hope. And any visitors to our service today will likely want a deeper understanding of our theology. How do we, as UUs, find and embrace hope in this strange Easter season? Like many of you, I am enamored by the awakening of the earth this spring. Not just the usual cacophony of flowers and bright green leaves, birds singing, and bunnies flourishing, but the unique moments of 2020 as human activity quiets and our impact lessens. The clearing of pollution worldwide with satellite images from China and the Himalayas visible from India for the first time in decades. The dramatic views of Los Angeles without the fog. The clear canals in Venice and the reduction of seismic activity caused by human activity. The animals frolicking in cities and towns around the world, monkeys on the streets of Jaipur, India, pumas in Santiago, Chile, deer visiting clothes shops in Nara, Japan, peacocks on the once busy downtown streets of Dubai, and bears making themselves quite at home on the courthouse steps in Asheville. Spring has come this year in the usual ways, but also in many unique and remarkable ways. Life abounds and renews, and that echoes hope in our spirits. And it also reminds us, poignantly so this year, of our interconnectedness, of the impact we humans have on our earthly home. Finding hope. I have also been very enamored by the human expressions of hope this season. From Italians singing on their balconies to young people offering to run errands for more vulnerable persons, to thousands making masks for those on the front lines. And closer to home, I'm touched by the powerful and heartwarming response of the Hendersonville community to the clinic's request for guest Wi-Fi access to enable our economically disenfranchised, vulnerable patients to access telehealth. In times of crisis, most of us rise to assist, meeting our better natures along the way and engendering hope for all of us. And while both the awakening of the earth without the usual human activity and the manifestations of our better natures are hopeful dimensions of this unique moment in which we find ourselves, neither speak directly to the special uniqueness of Easter during a pandemic. So what about Easter? As I said, as UUs, many of us frankly don't know what to do or feel about Easter. If we come from a more traditional Christian experience, we know that Easter is considered the highest of holy days, when according to the scripture, Christ rose from the dead in glory transcending death. The Christian resurrection is the seminal moment in that faith. And our Unitarian and Universalist forebears embraced a different understanding of that theology. To us, they bequeath a theological heritage that embraced Jesus as man, not God. Unitarians took their name from their belief in the unity or oneness of God, in direct opposition to their Trinitarian Christian brethren. So for Unitarians, the story of the resurrection was suspect. For humans, do not awake from the dead and rise in glorious light. Universalists likewise understood Easter differently than the traditional Christian understanding. Universalists took their name from their absolute belief that God is love, and that being love would damn no one to hell. Quite simply, Universalists embraced universal salvation, a belief that rendered, quote, the Lamb of God that washed away the sins of the world, a rather hollow statement. And given those theologies, we modern UUs naturally find ourselves challenged by Easter. We know that traditional Christian understandings do not resonate, but we cannot stop there. It is not enough to say what we don't believe. We have to explore and embrace what we do believe. And this too can be tricky because one of our fundamental values is the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Ours is not a prescriptive faith held together by creeds and defined beliefs. Ours is a faith of values and lived expression of love, justice, and peace. But still, it is Easter, and the strangest Easter of modern experience. So I invite you to explore with me how we UUs might understand this traditional Christian holy day and even embrace it, especially this year. We start again with our own theological history. Unitarians saw Jesus as a man, a highly evolved mortal being whose life and message call us to a deeper and higher understanding and state of being. Truthfully, our Unitarian forebears predated the scholars of the Jesus Seminar by centuries in their use of biblical scholarship to unpack Jesus the person from the myths, mysteries, and miracles laid into and onto the story by the disciples and followers in the century after his death. Today, in most UU congregations, when we speak of Jesus, we describe a man, a teacher, a prophet, a way shower, a guide, whose teachings and example we might follow as we seek to live our best selves. But is Jesus as mere mortal profound enough to explain Christianity? The devotion of his disciples, even unto martyrdom, hundreds of gospels written, many, many more than the canonical 4, and millennia of battles under the sign of the cross. Or might there be more to Jesus? Are the only alternatives to understanding Jesus be that he is mere mortal or that he is God? Or can we learn from Buddhism and find a middle way? For those who do not know me, I am a come-outer Unitarian Universalist. I was raised Episcopal, an acolyte for over 10 years, and attended Catholic schools for 7 years, plus 1 master's program. I am well steeped in the traditional theology. My journey took me away from that traditional theology. For me, on my spiritual and theological journey, I came to wholly concur that Jesus was man, not God. And that's partly why I found my home in UUism. But for me, Jesus as mere man is not enough either. He was a man, but somehow more than most. And I draw here on the works of theologian John Shelby Spong and many other scholars who explain that the miracles written into the Gospels are attempts by the authors to convey that in meeting Jesus, one had somehow met God. That in Jesus, one saw something of God. The myths, mysteries, and miracles are symbolic expressions of that experience that the disciples had of somehow meeting God in the person of Jesus. So what was it about Jesus that felt like meeting God and that evolved into that Easter story in this holy day? A core tenet of every faith tradition is that we humans are imbued with something of the divine. Some traditions say that we are filled with the breath of God. Some say we are made in the image and likeness of God. Some describe the spark of the divine. Some refer to the spirit within, that animating force, as one dimension of the universal life force, and that we are intimately and absolutely connected and interconnected with all of life. Different faiths and traditions use different imagery and language. But they all share the understanding we humans have a spiritual dimension to our being. And faith traditions also share the sense, the teaching, that we are called to live our best spiritual selves. That ego and material goods are not the reason for life and living. That hope and love and soul-expanding beauty and profound interconnectedness give meaning to our days and lives. And if we, as persons of faith, accept that living into our spiritual self is the reason for life and gives meaning to living, the question is always, how? How do we do that? How do we, as spiritual beings, live that dimension into existence? For me, Jesus is the exemplar of just that wholeness. Wholeness of his humanness and wholeness of spiritual self, lived as a oneness of being, spirit and humanity merged together. He lived his spirit so fully that he seemed to his followers to be a manifestation of divinity on earth. Hence they called him God, made him a miracle worker, and gave him a phenomenal death, which they then enshrined in the holiest of days. What if our Unitarian Universalist forebears were right? That Jesus was a man and a guide, more than just a teacher of radical love and social justice. What if he was and is a guide to living our most soulful spiritual self into manifestation? What if Jesus' call to us is to be individual, unique incarnations of divinity, of the animating spirit and life force, wholly connected to the oneness of all? With this understanding, Easter can then become a story told by the people to explain how God met in the person of Jesus could ultimately unite with the being of God. The resurrection becomes understood in that first century Palestine tradition. But it was not Jesus' death that made him special enough to build a movement around. It was his life that was remarkable. His death was merely the exclamation point on his living. Easter is the exclamation point on a life lived as a full expression of spirit. So what do we do with Easter? We can begin by not avoiding Jesus and the symbolism of Easter, but by making it our own, by acknowledging and embracing the life lived and lessons taught and guidance given by the life of Jesus. We can begin to explore the hope inherent in a path forward to our own wholeness of spiritual self. Jesus. His purpose was to show us who we really are, who we can be, and invite us to follow him into that wholeness by being ourselves as holy, divine as he was. His message is universal. His path can be our path. He invites us to follow him more deeply into ourselves and our own divinity. And what might we find special about this Easter 2020, this unique moment in time? Any times of massive upheaval can be opportunities to remake the world into a reflection of our values. I believe the call of Easter 2020 for us use to welcome and reflect upon the Jesus as guide for our living, for living our wholeness as spiritual beings, as a way to bring life to our own spiritual selves and live that beingness into the world. The call is to then rebuild the world as an expression of soul self with radical love, embrace of all, friendships, friends, and strangers alike, as manifestation of generosity and gratitude, of our profound interconnectedness in which we are all valued and treated as precious expressions. This time can be an opportunity to join with people of all faiths to create that beloved community, to incarnate our collective divinity, to manifest heaven on earth with full engagement with life and living. Can we find hope this Easter 2020 amidst the challenges, anxieties, fears, and unknowns during this season of social distancing and economic devastation? Yes, we can. We find hope in the awakening of the earth, both the glory of the spring and the lessening of human impact. We find hope in the beautiful and very human responses of mutual care and tremendous gratitude for our frontline neighbors. And we find hope in the message of Jesus' life that calls us as a path to our own spiritual and human wholeness, wholeness of being, and that this wholeness is both possible and an invitation to us. We find hope in the opportunity for quiet and reflection upon the world that was and the world that we want it to be. And we find hope in the chance to actively engage with our friends of every tradition and remaking the world as a true manifestation of love, justice, and peace. May we find that in which we find and place our hope this Easter. May we find those moments of hope, and they may be a resurrection to us of our own spirit, a call to new life for ourselves and our world. May it be so this day, this unique Easter 2020, and all day. Blessed be, and amen. Todd will now be joining us for one closing song.
Well, it's been good spending some of the morning with you folks. I hope everyone is well and safe, and I'll leave you with this song about community, which is certainly on our minds. Yeah, the people I carry around in my heart during the darker times when the road is shadowy and the wind is extra chilly. Both people I expect to see again, and others like Eric Taylor, David Olney, most recently John Prine, lives that have made a mark on my own. Anyway, most of you heard this song, so feel free to sing along loudly in whatever key you choose, because it won't matter. So, there's a man that I know, he's got hope in his pocket, hope in his pocket. He ain't got nothing else. A man that I know, he's got hope in his pocket, hope in his pocket, and nothing on the shelf. And he sings, do remember me, oh Lordy, do remember me.
She's got love in her eyes, child. Love in her eyes, child. She ain't got nothing else. A woman that I know, she's got love in her eyes, child. Love in her eyes, child. Nothing on the shelf. And she sings, do remember me, oh Lord. Hey, remember me. Well, now these kids that I know, they got joy in their smile, boys. Joy in their smile, boys. They ain't got nothing else. Kids that I know, they got joy in their smile, boys. Joy in their smile, boys. Nothing on the shelf. And they sing, do remember me, oh Lord. Hey, remember me. Now these people that I know, this hope keeps me going. Her love keeps me glowing, and their joy keeps me warm. These people that I know, and the gifts they're bestowing, they carry me through trouble, shelter me from storms. When I sing, do remember me, oh Lord. Yeah, remember me. Do remember me, oh Lord. Hey, remember me. Do remember me. Remember me.
Happy Easter, y'all.
Happy Easter.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of faith, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of our community. These we carry in our hearts until we can be together again. May we each find hope in this strange season. Hope in the awakening of the earth, hope in the generosity and interconnectedness of our human family, hope in the call of Easter to live as manifestations of our divinity, to witness the divinity of others, to give generously, to embody gratitude, to love deeply and wastefully. Go in hope, go in generosity, go in love, go with many, many blessings, and happy Easter to all. So one year, I think I was probably 5. Our house had burned down. It was a pretty bad moment. And actually, my baby dog didn't make it out. And it was Easter time. And my mom decided that the fun for my brother and I would be in our Easter baskets that year, that we actually got baby little live chickens. Now, I don't recommend necessarily giving live animals, but that year, for those few weeks when we got to play with the baby chicks, it gave a spark to life and hope that we needed at that moment. And our next door neighbor had a farm and had many, many chickens. So they had a place to go and live once they started growing up. And we had a way for them to have a meaningful life. But it was that blessing of life when we needed it most. I still remember holding my little baby chicken in my Easter basket.